Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2025 release, The Rule of Jenny Penn, and it's a Shudder original that's coming to Shudder on Friday, March 28th. So this is a no spoiler review. So I'm just going to tell you off the bat, I did enjoy this film, and I would recommend checking this film out. Typically, when films are from another country that are Shudder originals, I go in thinking, well, we might be getting something pretty good. When they're US originals from Shudder, typically they're not going to be ones that I enjoy a whole lot, but this one falls into that category of it's from New Zealand, so I was like, okay, we could be good. Also, John Lithgow is in it, and Jeffrey Rush is in it. I like both those individuals, and I gotta say, they are great as usual in this film, and I think that they actually tipped the scale of my voting a little bit for what my star rating will be at the end. I was between two numbers, and their performances just kind of tipped it to the better side for me. But anyway, let me get into it. This film is directed by James Ashcroft, who did Coming Home in the Dark, which I have not seen. Written by Ashcroft as well as Eli Kent, who wrote Coming Home in the Dark and Millie Lies Low. Also have not seen those. And Owen Marshall, who did a short story for Coming Home in the Dark. So obviously all these people worked on that one film together prior to this. Again, New Zealand film starring John Lithgow and Jeffrey Rush, coming to Shudder Friday, March 28th. So, quick synopsis of this one. It focuses on the main character, who's played by Jeffrey Rush, who was a judge. You get the idea that he was not necessarily high society, but very well thought of, very respected within society as a judge. And in the first scene, this isn't really a spoiler because it happens immediately. In the first scene, he's in the courtroom doing his thing, and things start to become a little bit hazy, a little bit fuzzy. Come to find out what's going on there is he has a stroke, and then he ends up in an assisted living facility. So it becomes this question of what is truly going on with him. You see some signs of, maybe we can't fully trust his perspective because maybe there's some dementia stuff going on right now. Maybe we can trust his perspective with what's going on. And what's going on is he is having an issue with one of the other residents at the assisted living facility, played by John Lithgow, naturally. So it's this question of all these terrible things that John Lithgow's character are doing. Is he actually doing them? Is this stuff imagined, or is Jeffrey Rush's character actually doing this stuff? So it keeps that stuff very much in the air throughout the film until pretty much the end, when you do find out what's truly going on here. But they do such a nice job of, well, I won't say nice because it's not a nice thing, but they do a very effective job, I should probably say, of steeping this assisted living facility in the proper atmosphere. Not just for how assisted living facilities are and how people living at them feel about them, but also from a horror perspective, because this is a horror film, like giving it that kind of like unsettling, kind of creepy vibe. But there's also like a dark comedy element to the film as well. So it's kind of a few genres kind of rolled into one. And in the end, like I said, this is a pretty effective film. So let me go through my bullet points on this one. I think a good job is done making things feel off from the get-go. Now that's starting with that opening sequence where the stroke is starting to be experienced by Jeffrey Rush's character. That kind of marks the end of his role in society, basically. And this film does end up playing a lot to that feeling that people can end up having of aging out of society. Like once you get to a certain age, and especially when you can't do whatever your job was within that society, in this case being a highly respected judge, it feels like you just don't fit anymore and society's done with you and you're just kind of a throwaway person. And then you just get scuttled off to an assisted living facility where you're just going to die with a whimper. Your life just comes to an end like that. And honestly, that's something for me, I'm in my 40s, so I'm not like super old or anything, but as you start to get to a certain age, you start to look at what is my future going to be. And, I'm still working and, I'm a contributing member of society, as some people would think. And I'm working and, I'm relatively young at this point. but you do start to, in your 40s at least, think about the future and where things are headed, because as society teaches you, you have to do a lot of planning. You have to figure out where you're going to end up and all that. But a film like this hits hard for that reason. Also, it's a situation where I'm dealing with my parents being of a certain age where they're not able to do nearly as much stuff for themselves anymore. I'm going over there more often and helping out with things. Also trying to keep them mindful of things that maybe they shouldn't be handling themselves, even though mentally they're young enough and they feel like they can handle these things. Their bodies just aren't there anymore to be able to do this stuff without pretty big consequence. So this film hits hard for me for those reasons. So anyone else going through any sort of similar situations, which I feel like everyone ends up there at some point for both the instances I'm talking about in my life. So this could hit for a lot of people, honestly. So they did a really effective job with writing the script in that sense. The way they do shoot the assisted living facility makes it feel appropriately bland, but also kind of depressing and a little bit creepy at the same time. Going back to what I was talking about capturing the feeling of this place and the feeling of the residents having to do with their relationship with this place, but also keeping that kind of horror genre atmosphere at play here. It doesn't take long for something kind of messed up to happen in this film. I think it's within the first 10 minutes, and it is not something I saw coming, so I was just like, oh, okay. I will say after that, nothing as drastic happens until much later in the film, probably like the very end of the film. But they do have other things that keep popping up that are a little bit unsettling and confusing at the same time. And it's confusion with, like I was talking about before, like, can you trust the perspective of how you're seeing this film, through the eyes of Jeffrey Rush's character. So as an audience member, you're kind of identifying with him. Like, he's starting to maybe have some dementia stuff. Maybe some of this is left over because of his stroke issue that he's had, that he is going through therapy with, and trying to get better. And he keeps saying that, like, at some point, I'm gonna go back home and I'm gonna be, so he has these hopes of getting out, but at the same time, where he currently is stuck, it's hard to deal with. So you can see that and you can feel that because of how the filmmakers pulled it off. They do a good job of making things feel a bit confusing, which mirrors what the main character's experiencing. I literally was just talking about that. The dialogue is pretty well written, and then what Jeffrey Rush and John Lithgow do with that dialogue enhances it even more. So at its base, the dialogue's pretty well written, and that's something that is a problem with a lot of more low budget horror films these days, is the dialogue's just not that great. But they did a nice job with the dialogue. And then you put it in the hands of seasoned, outstanding actors like John Lithgow and Jeffrey Rush, and they just do even more with it. They enhance it so much more. They take good dialogue and make it feel like very good dialogue. So again, I just can't stress how great Rush and Lithgow are in this film. And one of the things is, I've always liked John Lithgow, but I've always really liked the performances of Jeffrey Rush. If nobody's seen the film Quills, make sure you see the film Quills. He plays the Marquis de Sade, and he does a phenomenal job in that. Also has Kate Winslet and Joaquin Phoenix, so, stellar cast on that one. See Quills for sure. Also Mystery Men. He does a great job in the film Mystery Men, and that's kind of like an underrated film in my opinion. There are some pretty nightmarish sequences that they do an effective job of putting together, and that just helps you get even more into the mindset of what's being experienced by Jeffrey Rush's character. The ending is decent. I wouldn't say I loved the ending. It is good enough for me, but the overall experience of the film, I was like, yes, it hits pretty well for me. The subject matter, how they pull it off, how they make everything feel, the performances, obviously, I can't say enough about those. Ultimately, the film is a mix of sad and unsettling with a little bit of that kind of dark comedy I was talking about sprinkled in there as well. So it is interesting because you're feeling not great, like kind of depressed, kind of sad, kind of unsettled for a lot of this film. But then there are just those moments where you have to feel a little bit more lighthearted about things in a dark sense, because those dark comedy moments do hit you as like, yeah, I feel like this is kind of funny, but at the same time, like, should I be finding this funny because of the overall atmosphere of this film and the topic? And yeah, it does get a little confusing for that reason, though. So this is a sobering film that reminds us what we're all headed for, and how hard it is basically to age out of society. I think that's kind of the main point of this film. And yeah, it's going to be all of us, unfortunately. Very unfortunately. I really wish that society was better, at least American. I'm coming from an American perspective, you know, a United States society. I wish it was a lot better about its elderly population and people aging, you know, but we're not. We're not that good about it, unfortunately. But anyway, out of 5 stars, half stars, and play, I'm going to give this a 3.5 star rating. I did quite like it. I do pretty highly recommend it. But I would love to hear other people's opinions on it. Go ahead and put it down in the comments. Also, do me a quick favor and hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I would greatly appreciate that. That is your free way to show me some support, to say, hey, I like something you've done, even just this video or any video you can think of. I have a lot of videos on here. Notification bell button if you want to know when I'm putting up new videos. Also, I do have memberships available at the moment at 3 different tiers for very nominal fees each month, and there are perks involved with that, including getting access to all my videos early, some of them like months early, some of them weeks early, some of them days early, getting access to Discord, and then the top tier gives you access to videos that only people at that top tier will see, and those are more having to do with my personal life and just kind of like my personal thoughts, and it's more like vlog style shorts, usually around 3 minutes a piece, and I'm doing typically about 2 of those a week at this point, 1 or 2 a week, but at least 6 a month, probably more than that. But anyway, yeah, because I just started that one. But oh yeah, thumbs up also helps, and like I said, comments. Oh, and you can do spoilers in the comments if you want to. Totally fine. But anyway, thank you so much for taking your time to watch this video. I do greatly appreciate that. And until next time, keep it brutal.